Well, buddy.
3 holes in the ground.
3 holes
Hey-o.
in the ground.
Well.
That's not an acronym at all, is it?
Right.
Is it an anagram or an acronym?
Well, could anagram, acronym.
Yeah.
I just use every word that's big interchangeably, and someone will just go, "What? Oh, he must mean this."
You can make up an acronym. What I liked this morning was that it was funny because you were trying to remember what the term was, and you were like, for example, did you say sprout?
Sprout, yeah.
Sprout? And I was like, of all the examples you could give
I know
for an acronym, you said sprout. And I was like, what about like FBI?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I know.
But I also think, now that it's coming to my mind's eye, that there's a difference between an anagram and an initialization and initial. Oh my God. I don't remember.
You can't even do it, man.
No.
Don't even try. You're just going to make it worse.
I'm all over the place. I'm usually not this attentive for almost 11 o'clock in the morning.
No. I'm ready. I've had about 3-4 hours sleep, but
do you want to elaborate on why?
Yeah, well, no, I shouldn't, but I won't blame my son because that's just his job to be a 2-year-old. But yeah, he shit himself and pissed himself and woke up angry at me.
Acronym.
So yeah, it's a long story. Foxana. So he was really all kinds of rage at me at 6 a.m, and then plus he wanted and I had gone to bed at like 2:30. So but in the interest of transparency, I remember I suggested in our pre-chat meeting that we could come up with a fun game where we could ask Nadia the meanings of some pretty big words. I mean, being a Ph.D, you'd think, okay, well, I'm talking to a smart person, I should ask some smart questions. But I gotta be honest, I was looking up big words last night and half of them I couldn't even fucking say. So I was like,
you were just looking on the side of a Tylenol bottle. Is that what's going on?
So that's gonna just be a stupid game because it's gonna be I think you actually said that word wrong, but it means this. Like I was thinking that would probably go down. So I was like,
hold on, I don't want to generalize here. And I'm seeing Nadia in the waiting room there, but like whenever there's a PhD or a doctor, it's always assumed that they're the smartest people in the world. But maybe they're just very smart at one specific awesome thing, like I don't know, putting together a human body, but meanwhile they have a hard time kicking a soccer ball or something.
Yeah, she's the smartest person in this room, probably.
Well, that's non-arguable.
Like for example, I'll throw up a caption here. Like this was one of the words that I saw last night that I was gonna, this could be part of the. That's one word.
I see the word volcano. Is this one of those games where I've seen it in Facebook, where the first word you see is what your year is going to be like?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. No, this is an 8 longest and hardest words in the English language. There's ellipses after that, so there must be more letters. But I wouldn't even be you'll like I couldn't even pronounce it. So I was
Nadia, give me a thumbs up if you know what that is. Nope, no luck.
No.
Great.
See that? Yeah.
Dude,
so
nice.
It's kind of
so happy she doesn't know it. Makes me feel good.
Yeah.
She's just a normal human, folks, that happens to know a whole bunch of stuff. Should have come to Windsor to see Dr. Azar. Oh, true. So all my folks, I'm from Ontario originally, so my folks are from London, and I was just there a few weeks ago, visiting them. A few weeks ago? God, it feels like a few weeks ago, but it might have been a couple months ago. Yeah, I was visiting all my family there, and Ontario is nice.
I used to live in Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay, really?
Yeah.
How come I didn't know
Thunder
that?
Bay. I lived in Port Arthur actually, which then when Thunder Bay became Port Arthur, Fort William, that became Thunder Bay. I didn't live there when it was called Port Arthur, but I learned that Thunder Bay.
You lived in Thunder Bay before it was Thunder Bay?
No.
Like they had to change all the maps while you were living there?
No. I learned while I was there that before Thunder Bay was Thunder Bay, it was Port Arthur and Fort William.
Gotcha.
And the two towns, when they finally connected, it was because in Thunder Bay, there's weird roads like there is here in Victoria, where like it'll be this name until you get to this cross section, and then it's another name. And
Wow.
so, yeah, but it's funny because most people that are from Thunder Bay originally, they say, I'm from Port Arthur.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, meaning that they're from that area of, yeah. I lived there for like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, only 3 or 4 years. Nothing.
Yeah.
That's
I
enough
met a
time to
girl.
discover that you don't like a city and then you move.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I gotcha.
and then I broke up with my girlfriend and I left.
Okay, well,
Or she broke up with me, I should say.
Okay, that's a whole other. Okay, we'll get into
story.
that. Yeah, that's a whole other
Yeah.
story.
Well, we should talk about our guest.
Please
who
do.
is,
Go for it.
Yeah. She's actually a rock star researcher. She says here on her Twitter, on the Twits page, I literally do research on rock stars. And so I was perusing the net one night, the internet. I was surfing the web, and I found, I don't know where I saw it, but I just saw this drummer lab post, and then it was a video that so our guest today is Dr. Nadia Azar, and she's studying. She's been given a grant by, I think it was the Grammy Museum, to do studying on rocks of drummer related injuries, and I think just the drumminess of drummers and what we do. And so she was given a grant to do that, and what was kind of cool was the video I watched. The drumming lab name is an acronym.
Oh, it's an acronym?
It's an acronym.
How topical. Yes.
It's an acronym.
Cool.
Anyway, so, and that's what hooked me. And I was like, we have to talk to this woman. So, and you know what? I'll actually let Nadia explain the acronym because she did it so well. So without further ado, Dr. Azar. Welcome, Nadia.
Hi.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. I had no idea you guys were Canadian when we were sitting up.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You didn't recognize the accents?
Oh, hey.
Well, not until today, but
okay.
I just didn't piece it
together.
Connect
the dots.
Yeah. I'm on Victoria, and PJ's in Kelowna.
Yeah, Kelowna. Nice. I just moved here from Vancouver, so I was in Vancouver.
He was living in downtown Vancouver for the longest.
Which becomes a long-term joke because that's all I talk about is living downtown Vancouver.
Yeah. So Nadia, this was the clincher for me. Was you explained the acronym of Drumming Lab, which is brilliant, freaking brilliant. So can you explain to our viewers what Drumming Lab means?
I can. It did work out really, really nicely. It all kind of fell into place. But so, Drummer Lab stands for Drummer Mechanics and Ergonomics Research Laboratory. So, drummer is Drummer Mechanics and Ergonomics Research.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good. Exactly what we do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, let's be clear. I could have easily just went, that's terrible. You should probably change it. But in this case, that's actually really good. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I was looking at with the difference just while we were talking there. Acronym versus abbreviation versus initialism, by the way. There's 3 different types. So I would say it's an acronym, I guess. Yeah.
So what's an initialism? I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Initialism. Is FBI an acronym or initialism? The FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, is initialism.
Okay.
I think an acronym is where the abbreviation spells out an actual word.
Right.
Which I think that would be drummer lab.
The major differences between acronyms and initialisms is an acronym can be pronounced as a single word, where an initialism is pronounced as a series of letters. FBI is an initialism.
Okay.
Drummer lab is a acronym, I guess. Yes.
Got it.
Is an acronym.
Is NASA an acronym? See, these are the tangents. Sorry, Nadia.
That's initialism.
It is, but you pronounce it as a word, not NASA.
Exactly. So NASA, on the other hand, is an acronym because even though it's also made up of the first letter to the department name, it is pronounced as the word NASA and not by spelling out the letters.
Not NASA, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
yikes. Okay, here we go.
God, that's just a lot of information and education. So Nadia,
go for it.
You study drummers, and
yes.
How did this all come about? Are you a drummer? Are you a musician? What made you want to study us? I mean, as you can see, we're not some of the smartest people on the face of the planet. So
no, that's not true.
I was going to say
Okay, so oh my goodness, I'll try to nutshell this story as much as I can.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
yes, I well am slash was a musician. So I grew up playing music, consuming music, loving music. I played the piano for 9 years, did Royal Conservatory to grade 8. I played the flute. I dabbled in the drums. I messed around with a bunch of other things. And I married a drummer, and his brother-in-law, or his brother, my brother-in-law, is a drummer. Two of my uncles are drummers. I've been around drummers my whole life. So what sort of happened with doing research on drummers, though, so I'm a professor in the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Windsor. And I was so we study all facets of human movement and human performance, basically. And so my background and training is in biomechanics and ergonomics and injury prevention, largely in like work and sport related contexts. And so I said I'm a music fan. I'm a huge fan of the band Dream Theater. And as is my husband. And we were at a show several years ago now. And I was watching Mike Mangini play, and we talked about nerdiness. So middle of the concert, I'm like, oh my God, how great would it be if I could get Mike to come into my lab and like hook him up to all my stuff? And he's like, really? Like in the middle of Metropolis, we're going to talk about this right now. And, but anyway, about a week later, Mike tweeted something about being sore from drumming being a boxing type workout. And at the time I wasn't big on social media, but I tweeted back to him and said like, hey, I'm a researcher. It'd be fun to study your technique. Message me if you're interested. And he did. So he followed me back and he direct messaged me, and we went back and forth. We had a conversation, and so I was like, okay, this could be fun. So I started looking into literature on drums and biomechanics and injuries and whatnot. And there was literally next to nothing. Like there was a handful of studies out of Japan, a few out of Scandinavia, a couple one-offs here and there, but nobody really doing a whole lot of work to it. And I thought, well, that can't be. Like, how is that even possible? But anyway, I dug into it. I started doing some work, and kind of here we are. But a couple months later, Mike tweeted again about like how many calories he burns during a show, and making a guess based on some work that was done out of the UK with the Klemberg project.
Yes.
And so I messaged him and I was like, listen, I have stuff like lab equipment that if you wanted to find out your actual numbers, we could totally do this. I could bring it to a show and, we could hook you up and do the thing. And he was down with it. So for 2 shows on the Images and Words anniversary tour, I got to hook Mike up, and then he went on stage and played his show with wearing my equipment and then analyzed the data. And then other people heard about it. Jeff Burrows of the Tea Party got involved, and then Danny Miles from July Talk, and then on and on. And so like I just turned it into a study, and 43 drummers later, here we are. I've been to a lot of concerts in the last several years.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say, Mike, it's okay. I'd just have to come to a couple concerts.
Exactly.
No, I mean,
you sure really need 2. I think I joked with him one time, like, I think I might need more data.
Yeah, 100%. I think we live in such a great world where analytics are around us all the time that I'm certainly an analytics guy. I've got sleep apnea, and even my CPAP machine gives me analytics, and I'm just like, I'm in for absolutely all analytics I can possibly get. So even if you're an accountant and you're like, really, I can kind of measure my sleep, my heart rate and everything during certain tax seasons, like that's still interesting information, right?
Yeah.
And so to have somebody such as yourself kind of be able to isolate and spotlight what we do as drummers on stage and give us that feedback, that must also, so we'll segue into, it must also isolate problems or isolate patterns that maybe need to be adjusted. And are you finding that those patterns are being like responded to like, oh, well, it is what it is, that's how I've been drumming for 25 years? Or is somebody just like, oh, that's interesting, okay, how do I make myself better in this case? How do I reevaluate my playing based on the algorithm?
Yeah, not so much with the heart rate stuff, although I have had a couple drummers where I gave them because I give everyone a like summary report of what I found and all that kind of stuff, a lot more detailed than what I actually put on social media. And I've had one or two of them go, that was my peak heart rate. Like, am I okay?
Right.
I'm not going to die on stage, am I? And so I know at least one of them was going to take the information to their doctor and cardiologist just to be like, this is what's happening. Is this okay for me? But that's kind of more how I go about it. Is I give them the information and then they can do what they want to do with it. One or two of them, actually, one that was really interesting was Todd Sucherman from Styx. Todd did my study, and through a Styx show, they were headlining, so it was a longer set. And Todd's heart rate was among the lowest I've had. His average, and he was thrilled because he has, his big thing is about economizing motion and staying calm and present. And so he was thrilled to have this data showing like, look, this is what I'm preaching, and here's the proof, kind of thing. So that was so I've had some do some interesting things with it like that. One of them who I don't want to say who, just in case, like I don't want to give anything away, but one has a book coming out soon where he talks about it in his results in the book, in the context of his, So, that's kind of neat.
You hit it on the head there, because that was going to be my next situation, is exactly that sometimes it validates that you're doing the right thing. And in this case, Todd is a great example where his economy of motion is strong, and even every show you see him, he's just fluid and just like Steve Smith, he's just very fluid.
When you said his heart rate was so low, I was like, that doesn't shock me. Todd is like, he's poetry in motion. He knows exactly where he is at every moment that he's playing. I love watching him play.
And sometimes we forget that it doesn't matter if you're playing. I'm saying this generally, but maybe Nadia, maybe you can correct me on it. But I'm thinking like whether you're a jazz player or you are a metal player, if you're playing efficiently within that realm, then you're not playing unhealthily. If that makes sense, are you finding a trend of that?
Yeah. So I mean, what I've found, I get a lot of people who ask me, have you worked with like metal drummers, because they're, that stuff's crazy. And it's like, and I have worked with a lot of them, but their numbers aren't really any higher or different than regular rock drummers or other, because what it really boils down to is how you play. So if you are very, grand movements and tons of energy, then your numbers reflect that. And if you the thing with speed metal drummers is they're moving so fast that they have to economize. And so they don't, they actually keep themselves, I mean, they get up there, they get higher heart rates, but not, not so much higher than some other ones. And I've worked with, country drummers who are highly energetic, and it's country music. Like it's energetic, but it's not like, metal type, and they were among some of the higher ones because of the way they play. So I don't know that it's necessarily like unhealthy per se. It, depending on how they're moving, it could lead to other increase the risk of injury potentially. You're doing a lot of reaching, you're hitting really hard, things like maybe harder than necessary strictly. And so that could, increase your risk of injuring something or developing some kind of injury. But in and of itself, playing, having high heart rates, it's not so much that it's unhealthy. It's just that it's highly intense. And so people need to, my big thing is telling drummers, like, if you're going to play at that level, you have to prepare for it. That's elite athlete stuff.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. I was just going to say, like, someone that comes to mind as a country drummer that's actually is Rich Redmond. I mean, he sometimes is very, very showy. Whereas someone like Jay Weinberg, Slipknot, is very, you can tell he's economized. Like he's using finger technique. He's actually not moving a lot. He's using a lot of techniques to economize his motion. Ben Cesar from Brad Paisley, again, he's a country guy, but Ben is all over, again with his fluidity, but he's still flailing his arms. So I wonder, Nadia, so then is there any way that you, I guess, can metric or look at, say, for example, maybe little factors that you could pinpoint that would be, say, okay, I can tell just by my study, say, for example, carpal tunnel might be in your future. Are there metrics you can pinpoint right now that you can say you might want to just
Yeah, so nothing that we've done with like in the live setting, but we've done some work in the lab where we've had drummers come in and we put on our 3D motion capture suit and monitor like their body posture basically while they're playing. And that's
Right.
just in the lab situation. That's not, in a live performance situation, but we've seen the wrist postures. Like they spend most of their time with their wrists extended like this. I thought there'd be
Oh,
more like
wow.
this, lots like this, and lots at the extremes. Like we consider anything like, so if this is neutral posture, anywhere from about here to here is also considered neutral. It's like within 15 degrees of neutral.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
they were spending most of their time like way outside of that.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
those, that posture and repetitively, obviously drumming's repetitive, nothing you can do about that.
Yes.
It's the nature of the thing. So you have high repetition, you have repeatedly getting into these extremes of the range of motion, and you're putting high force through that.
Right.
So strong muscle contractions for high forces, and the impacts. We've done work with measuring the
Yes.
vibration transmission.
Right.
So all of those things are risk factors for
Yeah.
developing tendinitis, and the vibration is a risk factor for carpal tunnel syndrome.
There you go.
So,
On
And
the-
you
on-
and you and you
yeah.
and you said that like as a risk factor, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to develop it. It's just like you should
Right.
probably look at that
Yeah.
and act accordingly. Because I know I've seen Terry Bozzio play a couple times, and he appears to be someone who's like, geez, your wrist should be falling off. But I've heard a lot from other drummers is that his technique actually isn't that bad. It's just it
Mhm.
appears worse than it is. And yeah, he doesn't always do this, which is it's more his arms than his wrists. And so it's deceiving sometimes.
Yeah.
Whereas, someone like Thomas Lang, who looks like he's got it all, like he's really fluid, and yet he developed carpal tunnel really early on in his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's had surgery to
Yeah,
correct it
yeah,
on
totally.
both
Yeah.
wrists, if I'm not mistaken.
On both wrists, yeah.
Yeah.
I met him at a event after the first surgery, and yeah, he said it was incredibly painful for him for quite a long time.
Yeah. But-
Carpal tunnel certainly comes up a lot, but sorry, before you respond, is recently 6 months ago I was diagnosed with tennis elbow for the kind of the same deal, and it meant it was just the angle in which the attack the playing. So when I changed back to traditional grip, I wasn't hitting those muscles anymore, and I'm letting them relax a tiny bit. And I did some shockwave therapy, and it is what it is. But it's a lot better now. But
Okay.
I was not prepared for potentially a tennis elbow. I was thinking carpal tunnel for sure, but I don't know if that's what it was. At least that's what it was kind of narrowed down to, that the problem was. But I do know that the moment I changed my posture, the moment I changed my stick approach, it wasn't attacking those muscles anymore. Does that kind of resonate with you, Nadia?
Yeah, I mean, when in my research, the injuries that come up the most often are tendinitis and carpal tunnel syndrome.
Okay.
Now, tendinitis wasn't tendinitis could be anywhere in the upper limb, because those were the the upper limb was obviously the body part that was most affected by. So just quick nutshell, I did a survey. It was an online survey of drummers' experiences with playing related musculoskeletal injuries. I had over 800 drummers respond to the survey. And so out of that came the two most common injuries, and the upper limb was the most commonly affected. And a large majority, like I think it was 68% of the sample said they had had an injury at some point in their career.
Wow.
So tennis elbow is a form of tendinitis. And so absolutely that, although not too many of them named that specifically, like tennis elbow, but tendinitis definitely came up repeatedly, and it certainly could have been tennis elbow, and they just didn't say it.
Yeah.
Mm.
It was just not on my radar, because I hear about carpal tunnel all the time, and that word gets thrown around so often that the curveball for me was like, well, I don't think that's an option. You can't get tennis elbow from drumming, but nope, apparently you can.
Yeah.
Tinnitus. Yeah. Tinnitus.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean.
no, but what I was going to say is, Sean, you hit the nail on the head with the concept of increasing risk. So just because you're doing something doesn't necessarily mean that it's
gonna
going to
happen.
cause an injury.
Yeah.
It's just increasing the likelihood.
Yeah.
Right. Just because you drive in a car doesn't mean you're going to get in a car accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good,
But you're
good.
putting
But you
yourself
can.
in the path of the risk. Exactly.
You're, especially if you're speeding and not wearing a
Yeah.
seatbelt, you know, like
Yeah.
that's what,
Yeah.
so it's the same
Yeah.
kind of concept, right? It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that like you should never do this thing and you know that,
Yeah.
but you need to be aware that it can happen
Yes.
and recognize what the signs and symptoms are so you can catch it early before it becomes a catastrophic problem and maybe leads to you not being able to play anymore.
Yeah, I was also going to mention too. A number of years ago, one of the things you don't hear a lot about, but I experienced it firsthand, was I had a back issue with regard to my posture of hunching over,
Mhm.
and ended up having to go to a massage therapist. And before that, sort of like a physio, but also she was a doctor. But I thought it was just my back, but she explained me kind of the massage therapist explained the whole chest back muscles, how they work, and it was my back muscle had been stretched so many times from hunching that it when it finally relaxed, it twisted up like an elastic, and that was what was causing. So she needed to do the. Can you talk a little bit, I guess, Nadia, about your kind of metrics around that, and that drummers are often the worst for posture, and kind of what things you can identify through this study?
Yeah, so we haven't studied back posture in depth yet,
Okay.
mainly because that survey was sort of like the foundational study for the lab. It was the first thing we did, and it gave us the roadmap of like what's the most important stuff that we have to work with, and it was upper limb. So we're like, okay, that's the next like 3 studies that we did related to that, basically.
Gotcha.
So we're planning on going down that road, but just haven't yet.
Okay.
Observationally, I see poor posture a lot in drummers. But what concerns me more is not so much the back, is the neck. I see a lot of, this like leaning forward, especially with the head banging involved and that sort of thing. But I do see a lot of like head forward posture, and the center of gravity of your head is meant to be like in line with your vertebrae. Anything moving it forward, now your neck muscles have to work that much harder to hold your head up. And so, when you play for an hour and your head's forward like this the whole time, that's putting a lot of strain on the neck. I was actually really surprised that didn't come up more in my research, that the neck wasn't identified as like a major issue. It did come up, but not nearly as much as I thought it would.
I was so connective. Yeah. All those things are connecting right down the dot, right down to your analytics.
I was so shocked when the little bit of I had about a 2-month span there where I saw the massage therapist, and she even just like, she said, like, when you're sitting, your back muscles should be doing nothing. It should be all chest and abs, and that's what's meant to hold you up. And realizing that also too, my breath support while I'm playing is connected to that. So when you hunch, you actually feel like you're relaxed, but you're actually putting so much more strain, and you don't have as much breath support. And I was, again, it's like you've been doing this for so long, and you go, really? That? And it was literally overnight. And she suggested getting a throne with a back so that I could touch the back. And she said, as long as you're touching the back, you're okay. And she's like, even better, she said, you might want to seatbelt yourself in. But if you could do that. And then she mentioned what you just said, Nadia. She said the other thing is your head probably weighs about 10 to 15 pounds or something like that, which when you consider these vertebrae are not very robust. Like they are not meant to hold something in like hyperextension. So when she said, like, when you're like doing that, you're literally putting weight on something that's not meant to bear that load. So I'd be interested to see then, Nadia, when you do eventually do that study, but also extrapolating that into like following someone on tour who's been on tour for like 6 months, very little sleep, in planes, buses, blah blah blah. I would imagine, like, is there any way to measure that, like just the toll that lifestyle takes on you, or would you be going down that road, do you think?
I would love to. I've talked with a few drummers about, or I've, dropped mentions of like, I'd love to follow a drummer on tour. For multiple
I'll just
reasons.
go on
but
the
no,
Dream Theater
100%,
tour. No big
yeah.
deal.
Sure, let's do that.
Exactly,
No, but legitimately, I would love to do like an in-depth case study on a drummer over the course of like 4 to 6 weeks,
Right.
measuring all these different things, but in particular, how the lifestyle factors play into it. So I don't know, have you ever heard of the Whoop? You ever heard of this
No.
guy?
No, what is that?
So it's like a Fitbit it's an activity tracker, but it's considerably more than that. It's actually used by a lot of professional athletes. But you wear it 24/7 and it monitors all kinds of things about your sleep. And there's a journal to it where you log, how much water did you drink? How late did you eat? Did you, what time did you go to bed? Did you, yeah, there it is. How long did you sleep for? What activities did you do today? Did you work out? Did you smoke marijuana? Did you drink alcohol? Did you take any medication? Like it's got like this super exhaustive journal. And then every month it gives you this sort of like, okay, you said you did this, this, and this, and that was correlated with less recovery or changes in your heart rate variability or things like that. And so like, they don't need me to do that. I mean, anybody can go and buy one of these things and pay for the membership and track their stats. But I think it would be really interesting to write it up as a case study of looking at, the rigors of touring and what that, and then in addition, because the Whoop, basically everything is based on heart rate, and they do have some optical sensors. They do, I'm not sure if they actually directly monitor blood oxygenation or if they assess it based on, like, estimate it based on heart rate. I think they do overnight, but
Gotcha.
there's other things that I could look at, like, muscle activation or different other factors that may change day to day based on different things that I think would be really fun to be able to do that and get a really in-depth look at how touring life alters your physiology and your mechanics.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so many factors, like you said, like, have you had a lot of water today? Have you had any alcohol? What did you eat today? Have you had a lot of sugar? Have you had a lot of fiber? Like, I think a lot of those play into it. One thing I'd be curious about, Nadia, and I'm not sure if you've gone down this road, but you had mentioned the impact effect on your limbs. And I know I felt that especially. And I did switch to carbon fiber sticks for a while, based on the marketing that was going to alleviate some of it. I'm not going to say any names as far as companies, because I don't want to piss them off. But in sort of what you've kind of gathered so far, would you say your study has supported the carbon fiber absorbing that impact versus the wood? Would you agree with that, or is that just kind of more marketing?
So I haven't had a chance to compare sticks.
Gotcha.
So I don't know.
Vic has low impact sticks as well.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
do they?
They do.
Okay. I think I know which company you're referring to. There's a core in the middle of it, and they call it like their vibration damping system or something.
Yes.
Okay. So in theory, it sounds like it might work. I've never tested it. I haven't seen their literature as to how they determined that it cuts vibration by a certain amount.
Okay.
I'd love to try it out and not to try to debunk any company's claims, but to empirically, to be able to tell drummers, like, yeah, this stick actually does that. You should probably consider it if this is a problem for you.
Yeah.
Conceptually, it's a good idea, and it's a road worth going down. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have, like I said, we have done some work with vibration exposure, but it was more just looking at, like, what are the levels that we're seeing? There was one study group out of, I can't remember exactly where, it might have been Brazil. But they did something similar, but they only had 6 drummers in their study. And it's not clear from their write-up whether they had them play for 3 minutes. That's it.
Okay.
Which to me, I mean, you can make estimates based on 3 minutes, but to me that wasn't long enough. And I couldn't tell what they were playing in that 3 minutes. Did they all play the same pattern?
Correct.
Did they all, or did they play different songs? What were they playing? And so we basically tried to, like, replicate that study, except we wanted more participants and we wanted them to play for longer and play actual songs. So it was like more authentic, like not just playing a pattern, right?
Yes.
We
Right.
would play like,
Up,
so
up
we had a
and
bunch
down dynamically and those type of
yeah,
things.
like
Yeah.
play different things, right? So we had a bunch of them come in. They each chose 3 songs that they wanted to play, and we monitored them. And we got similar results to theirs. I think our numbers were even a little higher though in terms of the exposures. So it's the exposure. They're definitely over the limits. Like we compared them to the limits that are used in industrial settings for like
Yeah.
jobs where you use vibrating power tools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Jackhammers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Impact wrenches and what have you. So when we compare the drummers' data to those standards, they're like well above the level where if this was like a company and this was a job in a assembly plant, they'd basically have to take it offline, redesign the job, get rid of the tool, put it something else to bring the exposure levels within acceptable limits.
Got you.
So yeah, definitely exposure is for sure a thing for drummers. But the next question is like, what do you do about it, right? Like you can't not play. You have to hit. But so, coming up with some recommendations for how they might mitigate the effects of that exposure is what we're looking at.
And I guess too, like there's probably, we probably could talk forever because there's lots of little things. I'm thinking like even the molar technique, or like finger technique versus wrist technique and all that. I mean, the stuff that Dom teaches and would imagine play a role in, oh, sorry, there's sirens outside. They would play a role in the injuries, how easily you could be injured.
The risk analysis.
Risk analysis. And I wonder, Nadia, then based on so far to what you've seen to this point, what are some recommendations based on what you've watched is that you would do as a drummer to say warm up or prepare to play?
So yeah, definitely. I mean, warming up is important for no matter what the circumstances are. If you're doing something that is athletic, and drumming certainly is, you need to prepare your body to be able to handle it. So doing like not just a warm up like on a practice pad or even on a drum kit, but like an actual athletic warm up, like jog on the spot for a minute to get your blood pumping and get the blood flowing to your muscles and lubricate your joints, and then do the dynamic stretching to further enhance joint range of motion and prepare yourself to move in that way. And then get on your practice pad to warm up the smaller muscles and things like that. That's not vibration specific. That's just like good practice for doing something strenuous that you should do. But one thing that in terms of, partially mitigating some of the effects of vibration in particular is for everyone out there whose teachers, hounded them about playing relaxed. I'm here to tell you that they're right. Because when you tense your muscles, they become stiffer. Stiffer materials don't dampen vibration as much as more compliant materials do. So when your muscles are stiff, they're letting more vibration through than if you were more relaxed.
It's absorbing.
Yeah. It's helping to dampen some of the vibration. Not all of it. It's still coming through, but less of it will transmit if you're relaxed than if you're playing with excess tension.
Sean, why am I feeling such an idiot? This makes perfect sense, but I'm having these aha moments. I'm like, oh, that does make sense. Why am I not doing that?
I was going to say that. Yeah, that's just.
I'm sure you get this all the time, Nadia.
Would make sense in life in general, like to be more relaxed. I wonder too, Nadia, then, and I have heard this and I do this, but the importance of a cool down afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Any tips and recommendations around that, or anything you've observed or metrics you can share with us?
Shots of Jaeger, lots of it right afterwards. And then, that's how you typically end a set. Am I right or not?
That is often, you hear about that a lot, right? That like, I'll talk to drummers about cool down. They're like, what? You mean like getting off
3
stage?
more beers. Yeah, exactly.
Put my hands back in my pocket.
Yeah. So no, cooling down is definitely an important part, especially having done something strenuous. Like imagine if you rode an exercise bike for 30 minutes at like, and you're like huffing and puffing, your heart rate's like 160 beats per minute, and you're ready to die getting off this thing, right? And you just like stop. You just get off and stand there.
Right.
Well, all that you run the risk of passing out because the blood's going to pool down below. And so that's one of the issues, is that you could end up actually passing out. Now, usually that doesn't happen with drummers because you're walking around, so that is actually even part of the cool down, is just don't stop dead. You have to walk around for a few minutes and let your systems kind of come back to equilibrium. So your breathing slows down, your heart rate slows down, you're kind of letting your body, and like even doing some slow movements and what have you, some nice breathing exercises to just kind of like bring everything back down to normal, is really important, to just let your systems kind of, not have the shock of like go, and then stop completely. Is important. Obviously hydrating throughout playing, but definitely after, to replace a lot of the fluids that you can lose. And it can be a lot. I was working with Barry Kurtz of Shinedown a few years ago, and it was at a show in July. It was hot, and like he's super energetic. So he was like, he got up and he was super sweaty, and he took his shirt off and he wrung it out. And it was just like rain falling out of there. But so you sweat a lot. But then after the show, one thing I see a lot of drummers when they're warming up, they're doing a lot of stretching, which is not a bad thing, but they're doing a lot of like, I'm going to stretch, I'm stretching this, I'm stretching hold. And as part of a warm up, that's not really the time to do static stretching. You're trying to warm up. So you want to be doing dynamic stretching, which is like arm circles, elbow pivots, wrist circles, like stuff that's getting you moving. It's preparing you to move. Right. After the show, when you're cooling down, your muscles are already nice and warm. Your tendons and ligaments are nice and pliable. That's the time to get into the static stretching, because that's when you're actually primed to see some gains in flexibility and range of motion. So that's when you want to be doing this. And it's calming, right? Because you stretch and you hold for like 30 to 60 seconds. You're doing some deep breathing. That's all geared towards that sort of like slowing everything down and chilling out again. So that's when you want to be doing that, is after your show or after your practice or rehearsal, whatever.
Good Lord. Now I know why I've got tennis elbow. Holy jeez.
Too much Jagger.
Too much Jagger.
Yeah, too much? Can you have too much? Yeah, you can. Maybe. Can I roll things back for a second? Because we're talking a lot about drummers whose careers, like we're drummers here that have been drumming for half of our lives, and we've already gone into terrible habits in our life, which this stream is revealing. Thanks for that. But trying to unwind bad habits that's hard. That's hard to do. It's a huge effort. It's a lifestyle change. But there's a lot of people that are up for that adventure. Great, right? I think about the drum shop that I work in. I really love working with kids. I love inspiring kids to get into drumming. The issue right now is that, and I don't want to speak ill of it, but everybody's learning from YouTube. Everybody is learning from and wanting to be Instagram drummers. And I have to admit, the arrogance in me, I'm looking at YouTube drummers and I'm looking going, yikes, that guy's technique is rough. He's hitting all the right notes. He's doing it all awesome, but his muscles are going to be gone pretty soon. What I try to inspire, especially getting parents to educate their kids, is you can learn from YouTube, sure. But if you can get with a teacher to learn how to approach your instrument, and this is my speech all the time to them, learn how to hold your sticks, how to sit properly, how to make sure that you're sitting behind it properly. I always relate it to a truck driver. If you're going to be a truck driver, then you're sitting in that seat for 15 hours straight. You'd better have a nice seat. You better have a good throne. You better have all the stuff you need and have all your mirrors adjusted and everything sitting there if you're going to sit there for 15 hours. And a drummer is not unlike that, right? But I guess my question is, how do we make sure that teachers and educators are making that part of the curriculum? The physicality of sitting behind the instrument is equal, if not more important, to the longevity of the playing than the actual playing of the songs. I'm noticing a downward trend on that. Are you noticing any of that, Nadia?
Really?
Yeah.
No, actually. So the Grammy Museum grant that you mentioned earlier was actually specifically to study exactly that. So
Great.
what our teachers, our drum instructors teaching their students about injuries and injury prevention, and why or why not?
Good.
Because I want to know what's making it easy, what's making it hard, what kind of resources do they need to be able to do it or to be able to do it better.
Right.
So I interviewed 12 independent drum instructors who give lessons like out of their own studio or out of a Long and McQuaid or something to that effect. Not specifically them. I'm just saying it as an example of the type of setting, and ask them about what they teach and where they learned about it and what resources they use and what do you need and what do you see are the barriers, the things that make it hard to do it or the things that facilitate it, make it easy to include. And so I got some really, really great insight. Actually, all 12 of them said they did teach it, which was not what I was expecting based on previous research. But I think part of the issue is in recruiting participants. I think people who do teach it were more motivated to participate in the study.
Well done. Well said. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
So
because they were proud of the fact that they do. So I want to, be a part of this. Yeah.
And I think people who don't maybe were a little worried about like, well, I don't want to be perceived as like that I'm not doing my job or a bad teacher or something to that effect. And so they didn't participate, which is really unfortunate because they're the ones that I really wanted to hear from.
Yes.
Not to be judgy, but to say like, okay,
why?
What do you need to be able to do this? Because I want it, like at the end of this, I want to be able to say, okay, so I guess I need to write a book or do a workshop or whatever it is that might help people do it more, because it is really important for multiple reasons. Injury prevention, of course, it's important, but even just things like, you're just going to be a better drummer. You're going to sound better. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better.
Yeah.
Your point about YouTube and the drummers that are out there, like I had one instructor who basically said, part of why they teach it, they're like, I don't know who I'm teaching. I could be teaching the next YouTube sensation or whatever. Yes. And then they're going to be out there and essentially demonstrating what I've taught them.
Yeah.
And
a lot of responsibility.
A lot of responsibility, both for them and for that person.
Right.
And, it's the ripple effect of if I do it well or properly with injury prevention in mind and whatnot, and I teach them to do it, and then they go and teach 25 students who also each go teach 25 students. Yeah. The trickle effect of getting this out there is huge. So I do think it's really important. I think people want to do it. I think a lot of people don't know how or don't know where to get the right information, good information. And there's not that much great information out there. There is, but it's hard to find. Like if you're a music major, you're not taking kinesiology courses.
No.
You're not being taught these kinds of things. There's no time in the curriculum.
Right.
So at least that's mainly my assumption from what I know about music programs. There are a few college programs that have it embedded, but they're pretty few and far between. Or if they do, it's like a guest speaker here and there. It's not, a truly embedded portion of the curriculum. I'd love to be told wrong. If anybody out there knows that, that I'm wrong on this, I would really like to know about it because I would love to see that model.
I think you're right, Nadia, that one of the things I've learned in the last 3-4 years since COVID is, there's a lot of stuff online. There's tons of stuff online. And then like, this is it's kind of a good example because this is one of our tangents. So I got sick of watching Netflix and I was playing some video games, but I got sick of that. So then I started going to the library and I got books on making pizza, and I learned how to make pizza like in the old worlds. And I got to say, I've been online looking for dough recipes left, right, and center. And until I went to a library where someone actually had to prove they could get a book deal, could get a publisher to publish a book they knew enough. And yet online or on Google, I could just put up whatever I want. Anagram means this, blah, blah, blah. Like
we proved it.
You don't have to be peer reviewed. You don't have, what I mean? So I think you're right in that assumption is that there isn't a lot of information, or I should say there's not a lot of good information. It's just a conversation I had with Roy Burns before he passed away was the concept of pushing on the head when you tighten a Mylar head. And he's like, that's so redundant. It does nothing. The reason people did that back in the day was that calf skin does have, it's rawhide. So you do have to push on it to make it, but Mylar's inert. He said pushing on the head does nothing. It really has no effect. He says, I make heads. I'm telling you, it's like this old drummer's tale. And I think that's a bigger problem in our society now with Google and YouTube, is that these myths get like spun into, well, that's just true. And it's just like, and it takes someone like yourself who can go, actually, you know what? That's actually not true. And here's the data. So that's the other, I guess that's the benefit of the technology is you can actually comprise the data and say, look, here's the metric I'm basing this on is this. That was a tangent. I'm sorry. I don't know what
that's
my point
good.
was.
That's
but
good. How do you get people inspired to filter though? How do you get people to even go to the library?
Right.
And I think that's
or
the
even
challenge.
seek the right information, like saying like, I wonder if I want to question that.
Yeah. And that's something that came up a lot too, was the need for trustworthy resources. Where is this information coming from, and is it legit? Because like you said, like anybody can put anything out there. So how do you find good information, and how do you trust that it's relevant and that it's accurate? That's a challenge.
So then
with a lot of parent, sorry, go for it. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, so then Nadia, is it safe to assume then that, I mean, I know you've probably got like years to go before you, I mean, there's so many variables that I could come up with even to study, like someone who's bigger, someone who's shorter, men versus women, what shoes to wear, what stick, blah, blah, like you could just go down that rabbit hole. Is there an ultimate goal for you? Like, would there be a package that, would it be something through PASIC and whatever, everyone wants to say? Murray always bugged me about how I say PASIC.
Nice.
That you would have
a Canadian thing.
A comprehensive.
Is it PASIC?
That's what I think it's
PASIC as well. I say PASIC.
But my buddy said no, it's PASIC. Anyway,
that is.
We got 3 Canadians on here. We're all saying PASIC. If you're watching this right now, it's a fact. We could do That's how you say it.
But would there be for you an end sort of like, here's a comprehensive, and I would assume it would be through PASIC, because they're kind of like the, I guess you could say not the authority, but they certainly are, I think, a body of people that is really dedicated to education. Would there be something that you would have as a final sort of like, here's our comprehensive look at what, this 15-year study did? Is that like, what's the end goal for you, or what would be your dream goal?
Yeah, at some point, so I've already done a couple of workshops with mostly drummers, but some educators in there too, about, recognizing drumming related injuries and a little bit about how to prevent them. And I think over the coming years, I'm going to expand that. I'll continue doing the injury prevention workshop, but ideally right now, like after I'm immersed in this study right now, because I'm on sabbatical, so I'm not teaching this year. I'm doing mostly research, and so I've been like totally immersed in this, drum instructor interview study. But I want to put together, and you're right, that percussive arts is probably the best place to do it. But a workshop for instructors about how to incorporate this, and if you're already doing it, how to do it. Maybe, I don't want to say better, because everyone's doing their best, but
exactly.
do it with are there resources that I can give them through this workshop that will be more informed, or more rooted in sports science literature and evidence that this works versus this doesn't, and that sorts, or here's why you should do this instead of that sort of thing. That to have some kind of workshop like that for instructors to be able to take this back into their teaching and start to incorporate it if they don't already, or incorporate different facets, or things like that if they are already doing some of it. I think that's probably my next frontier. Not so much for research. I have a ton of research that I still want to do, but to in terms of like having something come out of the research and
Yeah.
have something tangible for people who are actually going to use it.
Yeah.
I think workshops and resources that they can take with it is probably the best way. I've been dabbling with the idea of writing a book, and I don't know if we need another book on. I mean, there's not that much on. I mean, John Lamb has that book, The Anatomy of Training, which is a great book, but like, I don't know how much more people need of that sort of thing. I think they need something maybe a little more targeted. Like, if you want to teach about this, here are some things. Like, here's where you start. Here's some ways that you can do it. Here are some things to consider. Here's the most important parts to integrate with like young students. And, here's I think the biggest thing, here's who to go to when things go sideways.
There you go.
You get a student who is having an issue, and because they're going to come to the teacher first, most likely.
Yeah.
So someone comes to you, they have an issue. Who can you reach out to? Who should you look for? Because your typical medical professional is going to be well-meaning, but not understand the demands of the performing arts, and are not going to have tailored advice that's going to work for a musician. Like, just stop playing is not helpful to anybody. So, and is not, in most cases, is not necessary. So that's kind of my hope, is that I can find a way to package this information of like, here's some actionable things that you can do. It's not another book to read. It's not another pamphlet or a video. Here's some stuff that you can actually, start using right now.
That's a great idea.
I love that. Our generation is a write-off. It's about getting the younger generation healthy and looking and playing. Our generation's right off. It's fact. We have bad habits.
It's science. It's boring.
No, we're good. No, what I mean is, like, am I going to change all my posture and rewind, 25 years, 30 years of drumming? It's a hard road to go down, and that's a lot of mental stress. And now I'm changing the way I'm playing. Like, that adventure is up for some people. It's not up for everybody. But I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Nadia, is that being able to inspire teachers and educators to get it right from the core, then I think that the younger generation of musicians, or just athletes, let's just say athletes in general, are going to be more educated and more aware of the risks and the rewards for the industry that we're getting into.
Yeah, definitely.
Super stoked about that. Let's wind her down here. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You've got a volleyball game to hit, so
exactly. Oh, I love it.
Absolutely.
One thing in particular resonated with me. A big theme within Drum Geek is the theme of failure. We're a big fan of failure, and I've got a question that I ask every clinic that I go to, every live, like anytime I can interact with somebody, but a clinic, I always ask the same question. And it's really interesting that on your Twitter, you have aspiring imperfectionist.
Nice.
It was so fitting, because right as I read that, I'm like, oh, somebody who embraces failure, right? So I'm going to give you the same, although you're not a drummer, you can kind of answer this however you'd like, but this is the question I always ask is, it's easy to put our heroes on a pedestal, but they seem more human when we see them fail. So can you maybe demonstrate, I guess, or talk a bit about, what you're failing at in your life right now and what you're doing to overcome that failure, or embracing that failure? Tell us a bit about failure. Your definition of failure. Yeah.
I might not be a drummer, but I am a researcher, and research is much more. So you've heard the expression like F around and find out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That is essentially research.
Yep.
Okay. I get paid to do that.
Nice.
But research is like 90% effing around and only 10% finding out.
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
There's so much failure in research. It's constant, because something you thought was going to work didn't, and the study that you carefully crafted didn't get the results you thought you were going to get or you hoped you'd get. The paper you submitted got rejected. the talk you went to that you thought was going to be great had some like awful questions after, and it happens all the time. And as one who has perfectionist tendencies, that was a really hard space to be in for a long time. Especially after having, gone through university and, I was on the honor roll, I got scholarships and that. And then all of a sudden I'm like, but you're just failing at everything now. And it was terrible. So I had to learn I had to recognize that was just part of the package and come to grips with that and learn how to not always take it personally. And that, failure was a part of my job, and that you just have to learn from it. You have to, that is part of the process. And if you haven't failed, then you probably haven't learned a whole lot, or you haven't taken enough risks to try stuff. So I've tried to shift my mindset to look at it more that way, as failure, as much as it sucks, it is an opportunity.
And
so
again more intelligently.
Take a few minutes to lick your wounds and then move on and figure something out from it, basically.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
Dr. Nadia, today was super eye-opening. And even while you're talking, we're going to wrap it up in 30 seconds, but even while you're talking, I've never evaluated my posture and my breathing more during a live stream. I sit in this seat. We didn't even get to the topics I sit in this seat for 4 hours during live. By the way, we could have talked for 4 hours straight. That's typically how long my other live streams are for. And I'm sitting in this chair for 4 hours straight and recognizing that my posture is terrible. I'm all over keyboards. And we didn't even get to the subject of like working from home and terrible breathing and terrible eating habits and everything. It's applicable everywhere. Anything you talked about today is applicable to life, and it's convenient that it's applicable to us drummers as well. So, so thank you for that. Sean, any parting words?
No, just obviously I flashed Nadia's social cred on the screen there. So Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is at Dr. Nadia Azar. Would be the handle. And then of course anyone that's watching right now and in future watchers, we've posted a couple links, Nadia's YouTube page, and then the actual story on the U of Windsor website about how this all got started, which is an incredibly interesting read. And I think it's so actually appropriate. It was Mangini that you were seeing as opposed to Portnoy. I'm not sure he would be as open. I know Mike Mangini is a bit of a science guy himself, and I think he took part in that Discovery Channel where they looked at the drum heads and what actually happens and stuff, which was incredibly interesting. And was actually spurred by Murray's student who lives in Victoria. He phoned them and asked them, "You should try doing that." And it was Mangini they called. Anyway, I know Dr. Nadia's got to go, so we really appreciate you being here. My God, that was, like I said, I could talk for 4 more hours actually. So
no, this was really fun. Thank you for reaching out and for having me on. I had a great time.
We'll probably bother you again at some point.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Lots of panel discussions, lots of things are on the horizon. This is a full restart, folks. Sean had another kid, and he's back to semi-normal life now. So we're doing it. Okay, let's end her up here. And any final words? Any last thoughts, Sean? And then I'm going to wind her. Bye. Nope.
Breathe.
Bye.
Relax. Breathe.
Breathe. Yep.